you go. I think we are recording now, so we'll go ahead and get started. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for our Rise with Ice Miller and Friends webcast. I'm Christina Fugate, and I'm joined here with Alice Kelly, who's a partner of mine in our Chicago office. Alice and I run our franchise practice, and we're really excited for everyone to join us this morning. If you haven't seen one of our webcasts before, we bring our friends of Ice Miller online to tell their stories, where they got to where they are, and talk about issues that we're all facing in today's world. And you can check our prior webcast on our Ice Miller webpage, and we've got several interviews with some really wonderful people. And today we're in the month of May, and for those that are familiar with Indianapolis and the state of Indiana and the month of May, this is the most exciting month of the year. And we're really thrilled to have two women who have made some great strides in the racing industry. We've got the Indy 500 coming up in a few weeks. So we're really excited that Marissa and Beth have joined us. We want to keep this conversation really engaging, so we encourage everyone to use the question and answer box on their screen, and we'll try to get to those questions throughout, but we'll try to get to them at the end if we don't cover them throughout. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alice, who's going to talk about our drawing for today and also introduce our guests.
Thanks, Christina. As Christina said, I'm Alice Kelly. I'm a partner in the IP group in Chicago. Welcome. Stick around. We are going to have a drawing. This time we're going to have the lucky winner pick a charity, and we will make a donation in your name to that charity. So hopefully that'll be great for everyone. So we always start off with our poll in the morning, and the question is, I have my Knob Creek cup, but I swear it's just coffee. Coffee, tea, or something else in the morning? Coffee.
Definitely coffee.
We'll wait for that. So while we're waiting for that poll to come back, I'm really excited and honored to introduce two women of racing who have agreed to come and share their stories with us. We have Beth Paretta of Paretta Autosport and Marissa Andretti of Andretti Autosport. And Beth, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Marissa.
First, thank you guys so much for being here this morning and for inviting me. It's lovely to have the opportunity to talk to you today. I am a new IndyCar team owner, but longtime motorsport manager and team manager and automotive executive. So I sort of came to racing from the business side of things. I now live in Detroit, but I'm not from here, so this was not part of my obvious destiny necessarily. I am from New England and started reading car magazines and watching racing when I was 5 years old. And so anyone that's known me my whole life would say that this is very obvious that this was my path, but I didn't necessarily get here in a straight line, which I'm sure a lot of people have similar stories, and mine definitely took a lot of twists and turns, but it all makes sense now looking back at it. But I moved to Detroit back in 2011 because I took a job with Fiat Chrysler. Prior to that, I worked for Aston Martin, the car company, and before that, Volkswagen Group. My Volkswagen I joined after finishing graduate school, working for a car dealer for a couple of years to kind of learn the business. Then got a job with Volkswagen Group corporately, working in finance. From there, went to Aston Martin and called on. I ran operations for half of the eastern half of North America, so I called on dealerships. I was the liaison between the dealer network and the factory. So I did that for a few years, and from there I joined Fiat Chrysler. And my job at Fiat Chrysler, which brought me to Detroit, entailed running the performance brand SRT and all of motorsport. So that was my first professional job, running motorsport programs. Fell in love with that side of the business, and did that for a few years and decided that there's a lot more to be done with motorsport, or thought that there was a lot more to be done with motorsport. Also became passionate about wanting to get more women into the business. And so I left Chrysler at the beginning of 15 with an idea to start my own team. Worked on that for a few years, and fast forward a few years later because of the twists and turns. And here we are now with my new team, Paretta Autosport. And what's unique about us is that we are female forward. So the majority of my team are women, and we will be competing, hopefully, I say hopefully because you still have to qualify, at the Indy 500 this year with a team featuring a lot of women in key roles, which is a new thing. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Beth. Marissa, what about you?
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Really, really appreciate it. Great to catch up early in the morning. So I serve as Vice President of Andretti Autosport, and I also serve, I head up our Andretti Technologies arm as well, so our R&D innovation arm of our race team. And then I also head up our all of our charitable initiatives, leading the Michael Andretti Foundation. So with Andretti Autosport, we are actually a global company currently in as of today, currently in 7 different racing disciplines globally at the moment. I live in Indianapolis, where our main headquarters is based, of course, and why super excited to be here and for the month of May and everything. And then we also have offices out of the UK and then out of Australia as well. So just a little bit of background for those of you who don't know for our team. We currently have 4 full-time IndyCar drivers, and for the Indy 500 this year, we're actually going to have 6 entries. And then, and that's just for IndyCar. And then we also have 4 entries in Indy Lights. So that's like the leader series before you go pro. So we're all about fostering that youth and, just bringing that talent up, all about that support and just building that momentum there. And then we have 2 entries in Formula E. So that's the all electric e-racing series. So we actually race on like the streets of, downtown areas globally, such as Rome and just a lot of other fun areas. And then we have 1 entry, 2 drivers in Extreme E, which is a new electric series. So it's SUV, all electric in very extreme parts of the world to bring awareness to basically the environmental effects that the world is facing right now, and to really make a difference in that regard. So a lot of fun stuff there. And what's pretty cool about that is that we have a male and a female driver that share 1 car. So it's a good time for sure and very awesome to watch. And then we also have 2 cars in Australian supercars with our Walkinshaw Andretti United team. And then we also have another entry in EMSA, and we, as of recent, are going to be in Supercopa in Mexico. So needless to say, always something going on. We race all year round. So when people say, what do you do in the off season? We don't really know what that means anymore. We're always go, go, go. So it's always fun stuff, and it's always great to be learning. And, there's always something new and a new challenge that you're faced with every day to try and figure out. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, that's just kind of high level. I was born and raised in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So I'm an East Coast chick for life, and okay with that. But I did make the move to Indianapolis when I was good and ready. It is a family business for me. So I have a lot of male racing drivers in my family. So we're all crazy, as I like to say. But for me personally, I definitely am more in the commercial side and just the back of house versus front facing. Personal preference. I'm definitely more shy than a lot of the men in my family, so we like to push them to be front facing. But yeah, that's a high level quick snippet of it.
That's great. And before we jump to our next question, get to our poll, we do have a majority of coffee drinkers here this morning, joining the 4 of us. So that's great. Now I know Marissa and Beth, you, when we talked the last time, both of you know each other and have a history that go back a couple of years. Kind of tell us how, 2 women in this male-dominated industry that are making, great strides. How did you guys meet, or girls meet, or women meet, and tell us a little bit about that.
I always say girls, I know, and I'm trying to stop myself from that habit because I feel like it's like an affectionate term, but I'm trying to say women because that's what we are, right?
Yeah, right. Nice, so guys.
Right, I know. So there are more women in racing now than there used to be, but there's still not a ton of us. And for the most part, we know each other. Just because, I mean, but also because racing is small and we kind of all know each other. As big as it looks, it's very much a family in all different, a literal family, and then an extended family in a lot of ways. But the way that I originally met Marissa and the Andretti folk, who I would consider like part of the extended family, is I cold called her father once because I needed to hire a driver of theirs. This is my cat. I had to. I was putting together the professional when I was at Fiat Chrysler, the professional sports car team for the Viper. You guys might be familiar with the Viper, the SRT Viper, the Dodge Viper. And so we were bringing that back as a race program, and we were filling the roster of drivers. And there's a driver of theirs named Ryan Hunter-Reay who we were keen to hire. So I was able to get Michael Andretti's phone number from Ryan Hunter-Reay, and I called him out of the blue and said, "You don't know me, but I'd like to hire your driver part-time." And the rest is history. And actually at that time, I don't know if I can disclose this, but we were then ending our, my role at Fiat Chrysler, I managed all of the race programs in addition to running this performance brand. And one of our programs was NASCAR. And at that point, we had just announced that we were ending our NASCAR relationship with the Penske team. And coincidentally, with the timing of when I called Andretti to ask about Ryan about a completely separate program was like a week or two after that. And so they said, "Well, can we talk about NASCAR?" I said, "We can." So that then led to a several month conversation. But in so doing, got to know the folks within the entire Andretti team. And we were looking to build up our commercial stuff on the racing side for Fiat Chrysler. So we actually hired Andretti. At the time, they had a sports marketing arm, and we hired them to help us with some work that needed to be done. And from then on, we just kind of, it's funny. Racing is a very difficult business, and when you find people that have similar sensibilities, I think you kind of connect very easily. And I think that I certainly found that with the Andretti folk, and that's, I think, why Marissa and I clicked so when we first met and have been friendly ever since. Am I missing any of the good parts?
Well, there's a lot of good parts, but I think you disclosed it perfectly. I would also just add that, when you do have relationships like that click, especially in our industry, and I'm sure many others, it's always a long time friendship and, a long time extended family. So there's always fun things and always going. And, you understand the lifestyle and you understand, the obstacles, and it's just something fun for sure.
The lifestyle, that's one thing that I think a lot of people might wonder about. And, you see us racing on weekends. So we don't, we work weekends, and a lot of those weekends are holiday weekends. So certainly that's why even by default, if it's not your actual family, it becomes your extended family, because you spend so much time with these folks. And it's like this interesting traveling circus, for lack of a better term, because we'll all be together, let's say in St. Petersburg, Florida, right? And we're there for the weekend. And then, you say goodbye on a Sunday afternoon, and then, 4 days later, you're at Texas or wherever, and it's the same group of people, and you're kind of going around, literally around the country to these, 16 or 17 weekends. And it's a lot of long nights and a lot of early mornings. And if you do it, you love it. You couldn't do this if you didn't love it, in all fairness. And it's, it's unique. So whoever among our families that isn't on the road with us certainly has to be supportive of this lifestyle. And most of us will tell you that once you start doing it, you kind of can't stop, because when you're away from it, you miss it. But we're definitely a certain breed, and that's probably why we're also so we all relate to each other, because you see us on those Sunday afternoons, hopefully in winner's circle, or the agony of defeat, as it were, but we're right back at it the next weekend, because we're always looking forward. And I think that's we share that character trait, which is why we're in it. You don't kind of hone the trait when you're in it. I think we're just wired this way.
Yeah, I would definitely say that you said that perfectly, and I would just add to that. I mean, from my side especially, it's a way of life, and it's how I grew up, and quite frankly, anything different is a little bit slower paced than what I'm used to. And I felt like when I was, going through school and working in other industries and such, all I was ever trying to do was, get time off to go to the races. and be a part of that. So it's, I don't know if you'd say addicting, but it's just a way of life. And it, when you have good people around you, that makes it all that more special. And it's all about the people you're with. And like Beth said, early mornings, late nights, always traveling, and the office in between all of that. And you really have to love it. And it is a way of life. And the people make it great and fun. And you make the best of all those long hours, and you have a great time doing it. And that's what's most important.
That is great. We have one more poll to put out there, everyone. It is, are you in the legal industry, the racing industry, franchising, or are you just here for fun? What if you could answer more than one?
Wow, people are filling out that poll. We'll jump to our next question. So, we've been talking a little bit about this already, that, both of you are women in this male-dominated industry. What challenges have you faced along the way as women, and what advice can you give to those that may want to get into this industry or break barriers in other male-dominated industries?
Sure, I could take that one. I would definitely say, always speak up, continue asking questions, whether, no matter what industry you are in. I have seen, that is very important to stay true to that. When it is a male-dominated industry, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, it's easy to remain quiet, or, as I like to say sometimes, dull your light, depending on that individual. And I really think it's important to always continue to be, your true, I know it sounds kind of corny, but your true authentic self, and always continue to shine and speak up and ask those questions, and never stop asking those questions, even if and when you are shut down, because it is a tough industry, but tough world in general. So it can really be applied to anything in that regard. And just don't ever give up is really the ultimate piece of it. And, continue to be yourself and stay grounded in that, and know that, your questions are always valid, and your opinions are always, appreciated, even if they may not be at that point in time. Always still give it, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think I always think that women, we're our own worst enemy. Like you say, like we hold ourselves back probably more than there's a perception that we're being held back, that we hold up for ourselves. Certainly, I think it's much different now than it was even 10 years ago. So, and we're seeing this sort of, sea change happening. So let's take advantage of that and continue that momentum. Because I'm certainly, although I have this female forward team, one thing that I'm keen on saying is it is co-ed, and this isn't women being at this table at the expense of men. I would say I'm not trying to take your seat at the table. I'm trying to build a longer table, because the idea of diversity isn't either or, it's all. And so that way, I think hopefully if and with that and saying that and genuinely meaning that, hopefully nobody's trying to keep anybody else out because of a feeling of being threatened or anything like that, which might have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. This idea of, if somebody else is being let in the door, then it's, then I'm giving up my job. And that's not what's happening. And it's really important to have that diverse workplace. And I think more people on the other side of the table that might not be of that diversity crowd are realizing the value of that. Like you could say that to any industry, right? It's, if you want to look at whatever customers you're serving or clients that you want to have your management be reflective of that, so that you're taking all those ideas on board. I've always been a collaborative manager myself and collaborative coworker. I think take all the ideas on board, figure it out, distill it, and then that's where you're going to get the best end product. But I think women definitely hold themselves back. But the one piece of advice I would give is to have mentors, both mentors in your industry, sometimes also outside of your industry, and peer-to-peer mentors, because sometimes you just need to be able to talk about things, and that might give you that perspective and added confidence that you should have. And if you don't have it, it might help to bolster that confidence. But mentors are invaluable. And I'm also a firm believer that you then also bear the responsibility to hopefully mentor somebody else if you can, and as we build our network, that the key to having a good network is to be a good member of that network, so that when somebody is reaching out for advice or help to you, that you give it too, because it'll come back to you tenfold.
It looks like we've got a lot of lawyers watching.
And just here for fun. A lot of
Just
just
here
here
for
for
fun.
fun.
I answered both, franchising and legal. You know, feeding off of that, Beth and Marissa, are there any mentors that stand out to you that have helped you along the way?
I can go first. I mean, I guess from my side, I see a lot of it as, this is not answering the question direct, but I see a lot of it as everyone in your life and all of your interactions, you can always observe and take something away from that and learn from it. So I am a big, a big believer in just remaining aware and, conscious of that and trying to soak up as much in as I can. I would definitely say that probably my brother, Marco, is a huge mentor in my life for sure. And then of course my father as well. And it's just nice to have strong men like that in my life to look up to, who, encourage me to speak up and continue to speak up, even, like I said, on asking those questions and opinions and sharing those ideas and that kind of thing. It's nice to be reminded to continue to do that, even when you get smacked down and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. One of my mentors has been for many years has been Roger Penske, and I'm blessed now, right, to be working with him. I've worked with him before in a few different capacities, but now to be working with him on this race team is really a dream come true in a lot of ways. It's really a gift to be able to just have that wisdom in your corner and be talking about things. But I originally met Roger in a very different life. It was actually when I was working for Aston Martin, and he was one of my dealers. So he was one of my customers, and it was a very, very different dynamic. And then when I was at Fiat Chrysler, he was our NASCAR team, and so I was working with him very closely there. But the other thing that I'm very grateful for, and I would recommend you guys to seek this out if you haven't, when I was at FCA, I was very privileged to be enrolled in this program for it was for women. It's like a women's executive leadership group in Southeast Michigan. So multiple companies, and it was something that it was like a 6-month program where you went like one day a month. But what they did is they put us together in these smaller sort of breakout groups. And so there were 5 of us. And what was great is they specifically constructed the group. So one person was from General Motors, one was from Ford, one was from Chrysler, one was from a supplier, so that you could talk about talk about business, obviously with intel redacted in for the minutia of the conversation, but many of them are, working moms, whatever. But the idea is it was that peer-to-peer mentor group, and we were strangers when we met, and this was in 2013. And we have maintained this relationship where we get together, once or twice, at least we try to get once a quarter now, 3 times a year. And they are still women who we can even email each other, call, text, and it's been invaluable. I mean, it was sort of serendipitous that we met each other through this program, but it's certainly something that you can construct on your own. And there's something very nice about it being somebody that's, sort of in your business, but not really. Like they're not just your coworker, because sometimes you need that objectivity. And that's something that you can always build, and you can think of that even, friends from college or whatever, but it's really maintaining that or actively seeking that out and finding those peer-to-peer mentors as well, men and women. Invaluable.
Yeah, that sounds like a great group, great organization. And, it sounds like you both had really great mentors. Next question, I want to jump a little bit to the growth of the racing industry. And I know, Marissa, you mentioned at the beginning some Formula E and some other unique racing series. So tell us a little bit about what growth do you see and changes do you see in the racing industry, both, in 2021 and beyond. Marissa, do you want to take that one first?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. From our perspective, I mean, we as Andretti Autosport are always looking to get into new racing disciplines and, be a part of the newest, greatest, next best thing. Always moving forward, always going as fast as possible, quite frankly. Obviously battery is a huge element of the forthcoming energy source, so along with many other opportunities. So obviously environmental friendly, forward thinking is going to be the way to go moving forward. of course. And I would definitely say that, you know, sky's the limit, and it's always about putting that innovation first and that, you know, that technology forward. You know, what we do is we try and use our platform as a development opportunity to then bring that technology to the commercial world and, you know, really advance that tech in that regard. So yeah, short answer, I would definitely say that in terms of the Formula E question and Extreme E, of course, in particular of what you mentioned. And I would also add, second fold to that is, of course, the diversity element of the world we live in today. I think, you know, this huge push forward is fabulous, and we need more of it, and it needs to be a regular, ongoing thing. And I think that, you know, we are getting to that point, and we are, you know, being made current, as, you know, Beth is a perfect example, of course, of the strength in that. And it needs to become a regular versus a minority situation for sure.
That's great. Beth, what about you? Where do you see growth in the racing industry?
Growing the audience, you know, is one of the things, as much as, you know, part of what I'm hoping is going to happen with our team, certainly. And it's kind of that rising tide. If we can get more people to happen to watch racing, because I think one thing that I hear from a lot of people felt like racing wasn't for them because they didn't see themselves. And so it didn't occur to them to even watch it or be interested in it. And there's so much going on. And there's so many stories to tell. And it's funny, I would say it's like sports for, it's awful to say, but I say it's like sports for geeks, because if you're really into engineering, it's you know, it's applied STEM. We hear so much about science, technology, engineering, and math. Racing is that, but in a competitive way. It's kind of like a science fair, right? But every weekend. And if we tell more of that story, I think some people would be interested in that. If you see more people that look like you, you're going to be interested in that. And all of those things will help grow an audience. And certainly if we grow the audience, it helps all of us. It helps every team in the paddock if more people are watching it. I think most of us that love racing so much, all we want is for other people to love it as much as we do. So that's honestly part of the impetus of probably why I'm doing what I'm doing, is I hope that, you know, 10-year-old girl watching from home might be flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden something resonates differently because she sees herself. But it, you know, for a long time, you know, racing is an expensive sport for sure. And even getting into it is one of those things, you know, expensive if you are wanting to be a driver. It's a long road to be a driver. But the thing that you have to also realize is that not everybody necessarily aspires to be a driver, and you don't realize that there's so many other roles on a team. So you can still be part of it. You know, it's funny, it's the only sport where it really focuses on that. Like, you know, we all watch football, and we know that there's more than a quarterback. We know that there's a linebacker. We know that there's a tight end. We know that there's a kicker. But in racing, we always kind of just talk about the driver, and there's so much more to it. There's 30 people there, you know, and maybe one of those things is interesting to you when you're watching from home. So the future of racing, though, obviously the technology thing, as Marissa said, we're going to see different engines in IndyCar soon. You're going to see hybrid. We have in sports car racing. Sports car racing, if you're familiar, it's like if you ever just the movie Ford versus Ferrari is an example. That was the 60s, but that type of racing still exists. That's called sports car racing, where you go to Le Mans or the 24 Hours of Daytona, these endurance races. That racing series is starting to have hybrid options, being sort of a requirement in certain classes. Same thing, IndyCar is going to be shifting to a hybrid engine. And in fairness, racing has always been an incubator because it's like a living lab. There are many inventions that everyone who's an IndyCar historian or geek knows. Like the rear view mirror was invented at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the first race because somebody needed to see what was behind them on the racetrack. And so those little things that then go to road cars, we always talk about the tech transfer, the technology transfer from you know, the track to the road. And it's literal, you know, there's a lot of things that can be tested and developed. A lot of the safety mechanisms that are in road cars come from the racetrack. You know, safety harnesses, safety cells, all of those things, and those are always developed on the racetrack. So as much as it might seem like this abstract thing that's either happening the month of May in Indy or all over the world, there are things that absolutely that you touch every day in your road car that come from the racetrack. So it's kind of an interesting sport in that way. It's not just entertainment. It's not just, a lot of fun and, long nights and early mornings. It is, there's a lot that actually can touch your everyday life. Nope, you're muted.
Alice, yeah,
There you are.
you're on mute.
The quote of the year. We have a question from the audience, which I will get to, but I feel like the muting leads into my next question, which is how has COVID, changed or impacted what you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, COVID has, of course, affected everybody globally in different ways, and yet all in very similar ways for sure, no matter what industry you are in, whether it be, forced to work remote, being prohibited from traveling and that sort of thing as well. Obviously, for what we do, sponsorship is our livelihood. So, of course, it has certainly, made things a bit more difficult, which, that's a hard job to begin with, of course. And so throughout this time, it has been a trying time for sure, but grateful to have had really good partners and sponsors that stood by us and, brought us through these tough times and, understood and were supportive when, the world is facing with, what we're dealing with. These are, of course, unprecedented times. And, when what we pride ourselves on, like from an IndyCar perspective, of course, is the intimacy of the experience at track and, that sort of one of a kind connection. And that is a pure element that we have forward facing of our relationships. And when something like that goes away, it's really hard to replace and stay engaged almost in a way in that regard. And, we want to over deliver in any way that we can. And we want to, stand by and do all the right things. And so it's really just about getting creative and, staying strong and getting stronger through this. And I think, throughout this time, not just our team and our industry and I would think other industries too, but it almost shows it shows the glaring gaps. And from that, you can actually identify them and build a proper strategy to get stronger and to come out of this even, bigger, better, stronger, faster, and all of those things. So, you never want to give up. It's something that is easier said than done for sure. It has also been a challenge just traveling globally and the logistics of that and the logistics of, sponsorships for at track and, global companies trying to get their clients out to the racetrack, but then they're not allowed. So how can we figure out ways to help them, figure out a way to help them actually entertain their clients? And it's something new every day, honestly, but we've learned a lot from it as well.
It delayed the launch of my team by about 6 months because I started working on this, last January, February to get it back on to put this last piece of being on track. Because my program also has a community element and a classroom element. So I say it's community, classroom, and competition. So working with schools, that's been going on, working in the community, that's been going on. But then the last pillars is the competition side, putting the actual competitive team together. And so I started it last February, and then the world closed. And to that point of sponsorship being the backbone, couldn't have those conversations. All those conversations paused because it was that unknown, especially early on. Companies were not that they're unwilling to spend, but it was that we don't know the timing, and just like everybody's been involved in. So I had to put everything on the back burner. And like I say, it probably delayed me by about 6 months. Everything's fine, okay now. But what's interesting is racing is one of the few sports that was able to be on TV without fans in the stands and still be entertaining. I mean, it's certainly strange when you're there and there are no fans, but the television product, is exciting enough. In fact, Formula One right now is still running without fans, also because that's a global series. So you're going from country to country to country. There's the problem you have, which IndyCar is doing on a national level, is you've got this traveling group, and you want to keep them safe, right? Because they're if they're sick, then the show doesn't go on, as it were. There's no sport. So it's keeping those bubbles intact and figuring that out. And it's been amazing to watch everybody try to, again, in real time, solve these problems. But racing was unique in that it was able to be on television and still be something that people could watch at home. And that helped. And that actually helped a lot of teams. Last year, they as you know, they wound up moving the Indy 500 from May to August, hoping that by then there'd be able to be fans. But, as much as it was strange to have it later in the year, it's something that was, I think, comforting for a lot of people at home to still have some of those traditions, because, you can only watch Tiger King so much. So it was good to be able to get some, and live sports is interesting, right? Because it feels like something that we're all watching together and we don't know how it's going to end. And I think live sports is always kind of something that, especially in this country, I mean, you could say globally, but we love live sports, because we're all kind of going through it together and it's unpredictable. Muted,
Muted, yeah.
Bless.
I've got a little 10-pound terrier downstairs that barks, so it's better if I'm muted. We have a question for you, Beth. I don't know if you see it. It says, in addition to being smart and hardworking, you have a keen and very clever sense of humor. How have you used that to bridge gender issues and build business relationships? I feel like there's a story here.
Did that question come from Alex Muller?
Kevin Healy.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Oh my God, if I didn't have a sense of humor, I wouldn't be here. Jeez Louise. Right? Yeah, I mean, I think that I was raised, I come from a family of a sense of humor. So I think that's probably the thing I'm most prideful about. Yeah, I grew up in a family where humor was currency. So I think the biggest achievement was when you could get, like, the older people in your family to laugh at something genuinely instead of laughing at you, to be laughing with you was like a nice, it was like crossing the Rubicon. But the business in general is challenging, right? The automotive business is challenging. I'm sure the legal business, we all deal with challenges. Why we sign up for it, I don't know, but we do. And if you don't keep your wits about you and a sense of humor, for me, it's certainly a coping mechanism, I think, for let's call it a spade. It's a coping mechanism, and it gets us through. And I mean, if a day without laughter is wasted.
Agree. I sometimes get myself in trouble with my comments that I think it's better to have made everybody laugh.
Yes.
Well, thanks for that. You kind of touched on it a little about racing being an incubator for the automotive industry overall. Is there any technology you see or that you would like to see developed in the future?
I mean, I think what you're seeing is the hybrid and the electric, and really, I mean, Marissa's at the pointy end of that sphere. So that, because no matter what, you're now seeing the government mandate where the future of, I mean, we've always had that. It was 100 years ago mandating, that especially in America, that we were having a rail system. So let's go for cars. And we know where that went for the next, century. And you're seeing that same thing right now. The regulation that you're seeing is really being dictated by governments around the world globally, these agreements of whether it be in the US, the CAFE standards, et cetera, corporate average fuel economy. I'm sorry, I use acronyms that I shouldn't. And those are debated in rooms in Washington. They're not necessarily with people, and this is me just having my automotive hat on, I'm sorry. It's embedded in my scalp at this point, but those conversations that are happening among lobbyists and in rooms in Washington are not often held with people from the automotive companies at the table. So sometimes they're effectively like just throwing something at the wall and saying 54 miles per gallon, that's what we want. And then the car companies then have to scramble to then meet those standards and those averages. And what that has resulted in, at least in the past decade, is, for lack of a better term, shenanigans by car companies to figure out offsets, carbon offsets. That's why you're seeing mergers with companies, because the average fuel economy has to do with the average of the portfolio. But you've got all these companies making more and more trucks, So the way that they offset that is, in fact, part of the reason why you've seen this push towards SUVs. It's not because, I hope I'm not letting a cat out of the bag here. It's not because Americans necessarily want SUVs. It's because technically, if you take that car and instead of having it on a car platform, it's on a small truck platform, that vehicle is in a different category, which has a different exemption and a different, it affects that car company's average fuel economy. So as much as they're trying to say to you that, like, no, Americans want small SUVs. Oh no, that was the tail wagging the dog. That was, this ebb and flow going the other way of like, no, we have to hit this arbitrary number that was set. I'm not saying that all of this is wrong. I mean, we need to be getting to things that are better for the environment, but you ideally should have more people at the table so that this is done in a more efficient way, so that we're getting good results versus these being like these pendulum swings of, reactions from legislation. So the stuff that's happening on the racetrack with things like Formula E, those are ways to find, battery range, the idea that these things become more commonplace. The expense that's going on through R&D on the racetrack, that's the high expense that then you're going to amortize and figure out how do you then apply that to your road cars. But it's been this interesting sort of push-pull, and I don't know that the full story is necessarily disclosed of why all this stuff is happening. But the good news is, as much as these battery companies or car companies can figure out some of the nuances on the racetrack, there will be there will eventually be a way that it filters into the car that you have in your garage at home. People ask if Tesla's going to get into racing. I get that all the time. Like, is Tesla going to be in Formula E? No, they're not. They're not, because they're not really a car company.
It's going on Saturday Night Live, so.
I know, exactly. They're too busy going to space.
I would definitely also add to that. I mean, it goes without being said, though, but the fact of our platform is to actually accelerate that technology and figure out those problems at a ridiculously fast pace. So, for example, of the Formula E technology with the batteries, not too long ago, halfway through the race, we actually used to have to do a car change as like a pit stop because the battery longevity wouldn't last the entire race. And that was not long ago at all. And now we can, do double that, and we're making it the full range. And, the accelerated manner of which that is achieved is, can only be applied in our platforms. And, with that is what is most important. So, no matter what kind of technology it is, if we put it into our platform, it will be accelerated at a ridiculously high speed to then be applied to the real world, not just on the racetrack. So it's fun for sure. There's always
Absolutely.
something new. So that's why, Beth and I are always just trying to get other people to understand how cool that is.
Yeah.
And to
It's
make
like
that
so much more than a sport. This is a business.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is an industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yes, you can test things like on a football field, but this is different.
Do you see any changes in like autonomous vehicles or anything along that line with respect to racing?
They've been doing some autonomous racing, haven't they? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm such a purist. I see it and I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I get it.
Yes.
I see one of the questions in here, just I can quickly answer. It says, do you have women in positions such as mechanics, spotters, engineers, or other like spotters traditionally occupied by men? Yes. So I haven't officially disclosed the full number just because I'd like it to be a surprise when we get there for practice. But yes, we have female spotters. We have women that are going to be going over the wall. We have female engineers and mechanics. So you're going to see we're about 70% women.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
We have 2 spotters and they're both women.
That's awesome. Speaking of, the Indy 500 in IndyCar, we're going to bring up our next and last polling question.
Okay.
And it is, have you ever been or ever watched an IndyCar race, attended one, or I guess driven in one?
Driven in one? Who's calling in?
I don't know.
If you haven't gone, you should.
Yeah.
They're fun.
And while we're having the audience answer that, along the COVID question, I know COVID's probably keeping both of you up at night still, but what else is keeping you up at night?
For me, I would say all of the things that I have to do, as I'm sure a lot of other women struggle with too, just going in your mind nonstop, along with all of the other world anxieties that we all deal with on the daily high level.
Seriously. So the added layer to what we're doing with my team is obviously we have a lot of extra eyeballs. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. And for instance, and I use this example all the time, like let's say in our pit stop, one of our ladies drops the gun, as anyone, you know, the gun to change the wheel, change the lug on the wheel, and they drop the air gun. Normal thing that can happen in a race. The Andretti team guy dropped the gun too. We're going to get so much more scrutiny for that same bauble. And that comes with the territory, and we're used, you know, we're ready for that. And that's one of the things I talk to my women about is that, you know, we're under different scrutiny and we know that. And so one of the ways that I try to counter that is to say to them, like, as we go through this process, because, you know, we're now in this month of May, and so we've got all these days of practice, which is televised and all this stuff. And we also have, you know, the other teams are kind of, you know, looking over at us as well. And I just make sure that our women know that my door is always open. We're going through this together. We're bearing this burden together. You're not alone. And things are going to happen, and that's okay. And so that added layer that the other teams out there don't really have to think about, that's the extra thing that I think keeps me up at night. I just want to make sure, because, you know, and I thought about it even when we were at the open test. Because if we make a mistake, it has added scrutiny. I don't want anyone to think that we don't belong there. That if we make the same mistake that another team makes, which happens, life happens, right? I mean, the whole thing about racing is making the fewest mistakes, and you know, doing your best, making the fewest mistakes, and hitting your marks. But we're all human, and the added pressure of if we make a mistake, is there a different implication about that? And obviously it's nothing that I can sweat. I can't sweat it too much, but I'm of the mind that I at least have to acknowledge that that's a possibility, because it's easier for me to just address the elephant in the room than ignore it. And so I make sure I make a point of saying that to the women on our team, to say like, hey, you know, but we're together and we're going through this, and hopefully that just like deflates it. But that does keep me up at night, for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, for those that do stumble just in any regard, it's really about how quick you can get back up and be running off from then. And don't let that stumble, you know, torment your mind then, and get you caught up on the next few rounds kind of thing too, for
Exactly.
sure.
Yeah, racers by nature have to be resilient, because if you just get into that spiral, it's not, you know, you would have to always be thinking of the next lap, the next race. That's why if you ever see, like, whenever you see that post-race interview with any driver, he or she will say, like, just look, you know, looking forward to Texas, looking forward to, you
On to
know,
the next.
on to the next. Can't wait for Lunatica. Yeah, and that it's real, you know. It's, I mean, oh my gosh, the best example of that. So in 2012, we won the championship with Roger Penske in NASCAR. The confetti is still falling from the sky, and they put a microphone in front of Roger Penske. It's his first NASCAR championship, believe it or not. For as much IndyCar wins, he'd never won a NASCAR championship in Cup, and this was in 2012, and we win this championship. And it was with Dodge. That was the brand that we were running. Dodge hadn't won since 1975. It was a big deal. Microphone in front of Roger Penske. There's Miller Lite splashing about, because that was the sponsor for the car. How do you feel, Roger? Roger Penske says, "This is really great. Really want to, next, I want to conquer Le Mans." Like, the confetti has not even hit the ground, and he's talking about the next race that he wants to win. It was like, can you take a second? It was awesome. But that's how we are. I mean, I'm sure Marissa can vouch. Like, I'm sure, yeah. Marco says it. Your dad says it.
It's a mentality for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can you just take a hot second and just like enjoy this? No, we cannot.
Yeah.
Which is good though when you have a bad day, right? It's the same. It's the same mentality that like, next weekend.
Keep going. So,
Which is why at 84 years old or 83 years old, Roger Penske was like, I'll buy the IndyCar series. Sure.
I love that.
Right? I mean, if only we're making those decisions at 83 and 84 years old.
I certainly hope so. Yeah, when you see like Dr. Fauci, you're like, how old is that guy? Like,
How old?
he's
I don't even know, right?
he's about 80. I just, I hope
Is
I'm
he?
as sharp. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he's 80, 81, something like that.
Yeah. Can't slow down.
So this question, I feel like it's and or, because sometimes what makes you happy doesn't always make you healthy. What have you been doing to stay happy or healthy during this lockdown, especially where you have such a fun, go, 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 typical tour? Being locked up doesn't sound like it fits well with the personalities.
I
It's
got back to
different.
reading. I'm a big reader, and I've been back to reading, and I'm grateful to be able to be reading. And I actually I now go to the gym, which I never used to do. So I had to shed the COVID-19 I gained.
For me, I would definitely say, making it a priority to try and spend time with, friends and loved ones. Of course, maintaining your bubble and such and being responsible throughout this time. But that is certainly a priority throughout, what we've been learning for sure. And for me, in terms of staying happy and healthy, I'm a huge yogi. So love to make yoga a priority, but I also love to run and bike and weightlift and just do all the fun workout things. It's one of my favorite bits. So really making time for that, because it's really hard to do when you're traveling a lot, and when you are in the office in between those travels and that kind of thing, when it's always go, go, go. So it's nice to do that along with just walks and spending time with my dog.
We should have a dog rise with
We should.
everybody brings
Yes.
their dogs and cat. Well, we're
I
getting
do.
short. Go ahead, Christina.
I was just going to say our polling, we do have 11%. So I think that's one person who has driven an Indy car that's on our webcast today. So that's exciting. And quite a few
Is Marco
people have
watching?
watched Indy cars. I don't know. Well, for our last question before we get to our drawing, Beth, Marissa, if you could do it all over again, would you change anything?
No.
No.
No. It was grueling at times, but it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I, again, like to be conscious of the fact of every day, leave it all out on the table, live it like it's your last, honestly. And, with that, you're rare to find those regrets then of, oh, I shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of deal. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Well, this has been so much fun. This is the most fun thing I do. And just hearing your stories and the energy is just great. I really hope the Indy 500 goes awesome for both
Thank
teams.
you. Now everybody's got
Yeah.
7 cars to cheer for at the 500.
I'm excited.
One.
Now I'm wondering if I could just make it down there. I'm sure tickets are ungodly expensive at this point on StubHub. All right, I'm going to announce our winners, and Kristen Fauser will be emailing your winners to find out what charity you want donated to. They are Lisa Micka and Marcus Bradshaw. Thank you for tuning in. And a lucky charity is going to be a beneficiary of your draw. Well, that's all we have. We try to keep it to 1 hour. Thanks again. This is always so fun, and just best of luck. I'm really excited to watch the race now.
Good.
Thank
We
you
need
guys
all
so
to watch
much.
the race.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if
And
you
I'm
put
going to
the
have
TV on and
my
walk
little
away
kids
from
watch with me too.
Good.
If you need to register those logos,
Yep. Already in
Thank you guys
process.
so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really do appreciate your time.
Okay. Make it a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, guys.